turn out. So yeah, first things first, Metroidvania tier list, right? This is going to be ranking all the Metroidvanias I've played up to this very point, including ones I've started but not finished, but trust me, there won't be many of those. Now, the criteria we're going to be using is the same as it's always been. It's going to be based on my evaluation of the core Metroidvania components, you know, fast travel, map design, movement, traversing, and of course combat and bosses, quality of life. All of those things are going to be factors, right? We're not going to go in laborious detail on this stream, though. None of this tier list will be in laborious detail. It's going to be pretty high-level summary. And as we go along and complete more Metroidvanias, we'll add to this list, and we'll see if I have any new, fresh perspectives on certain games and make adjustments accordingly. Yeah, so why not get started? We have gold standard, we have upper echelon, we have enjoyable, decent, disappointing, and haven't finished yet. I think they're all self-explanatory. I don't think there would be very many in the disappointing tier. I know many of you will probably be disappointed by that fact, but trust me, there aren't that many bad ones. I actually forgot to add a few demos I played before, but honestly, I don't think it's worth adding demos because demos are not really fair to judge a full game on. All right, let's get started. We're not going to go in order of the way things are listed here. We're going to go in the reverse order. So we're going to start with Vernal Edge. Vernal Edge is a game I played start to finish last year. This was a game I picked up because it was on sale and bundled with a game that we had in our blind race queue. So I decided to pick it up. It looked interesting. Hello, algorithm. Oh, that's cool. Hi there, Michael. What's up? Yeah, we're ranking some Metroidvanias with the ones I've played so far. We're not going to go in super big detail because that's not the purpose of this, but I'll try to go over things from what I recall playing these. But yeah, Vernal Edge. Yeah, I saw this game. It was bundled with another game we had in our blind race queue, so I decided to pick it up. I played it. Honestly, I was liking the game for a while throughout, and then it started to feel like a chore towards the end game. One thing about this game that didn't sit well with me was the fact that the structure of the game progression is level-based in the same vein as Order of Ecclesia, but the issue is that each individual level is like its own quote-unquote Metroidvania of itself, right? And normally this can work fine. Like, I think it works okay in Order of Ecclesia. It's not the best, but it works okay in Order of Ecclesia. I think in Vernal Edge it doesn't work that well. And it's mostly because you don't have great fast travel in this game. Not just great fast travel, but you don't have great, like, there's not like great what's the word? Contiguity? Is that the word? Like, it's not well connected each individual map. And oftentimes it's hard to tell where you need to go. You kind of just need to stumble upon the next place you need to go to, which normally is okay if the game's quality of life is serviceable, but I don't think that was the case with this game. Vernal Edge was pretty rough on the edges, quality of life wise. Basically minimal level of detail at the map. The map design itself was not super well thought out. Felt like it put backtracking there just for the sake of saying it's a Metroidvania. The combat was cool to start with, but eventually it dragged on because the enemies are just sponges. Everything takes forever to kill, and it just got frustrating after a while. So I think this is definitely a disappointing game. And it sucks to say this, because I think there were a lot of cool ideas brought in here. Hey, Shock, what's up? Yeah, it has been a while. Excellent, you just got back to Metroidvanias heavily lately. Nice, that's it. That's great to hear. There have been a lot of new ones coming out, so there's no shortage of new things to discover from what we'll be talking about, perhaps. It's an interesting set of games, lots you play and lots you never heard of. Well, that can be both good and bad. Maybe you can flame me for any interesting opinions, or maybe you can find new games to explore. But I hope you've been well, Shock. We just finished Bloodstained yesterday. But yeah, Vernal Edge, disappointing game. I think by the end of it, I was like, man, I'm so glad to be done. And that's never something you want to feel like after you're done with the game. It's not a super long game. It's like a medium-sized game, I would say, but there's a lot of padding due to the fact that it's very unclear where you're supposed to go at several points in the game. And it's fine it's fine to be lost in a Metroidvania, I think, as long as the player can intuit how to get unlost, right? Like basically whatever the game provides as a means of understanding where you need to go next. If it provides them in a clear way, that's a recognizable pattern and is communicated consistently through the game's language, then I think it's fine. But this game, that wasn't the case. There are a lot of side things you could do too, like mini games and extra collectibles. I didn't bother with those. By the time it was done, I was just like, all right, I'm good. But do check it out for yourself if you're interested in the combat. The combat is definitely a cool skeleton, a cool foundation. It's just that I don't think it meshed well with the enemy design, because the enemies are, for the most part, they're extremely basic and samey for that matter. Like the enemies almost throughout the whole game are like the same enemies all throughout. Minor differences in how much super armor they have or how much damage they take or whatever. But yeah, it's a big problem. It would have been cool to see what they could have done with the combat with different enemy design. You just recently beat Blasphemous 1 and 2, starting Axiom Verge to look forward to something solid now. Nice, yeah. I haven't played any of the Blasphemous games, but I've heard things about them, let's say that. Can't say I'm a fan of the adjacent genre that Blasphemous falls under, but I understand the appeal. Can't go wrong with the Metroid games. Yeah, from what I can gather, that seems to be the case. So yeah, Vernal Edge, that's gonna go there. Disappointing. Again though, do check it out for yourself if you're curious about how the game is. It's not a game I wouldn't say steer away from. I think eventually we'll have a tier under disappointing to say like stay away from this game. I don't think Vernal Edge is that kind of game necessarily, but I wouldn't recommend it personally. Okay, next, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Now obviously I'm biased with this one because I've played this game a ton, in the randomizer context especially, but I've played the vanilla game enough times to have a, how to say it, have a relatively nuanced perspective. Add the perspective from a first playthrough, as well as the perspective from a replay, as well as the perspective from, you know, using speedrun tech and glitches, right? And then the randomizer perspective too. I don't want to bring the randomizer perspective in that much though, because I don't think that's the same thing really. But regardless, Symphony of the Night is the gold standard of the genre in my opinion. I don't think it's aged the best, and we are going to rank within tiers. I don't think it's aged the best out of the ones in gold standard, but I do think it is the definition of gold standard. It set the parameters, it set the foundation, it set the guidelines for how Metroidvanias were made thereafter, especially Egovanias in particular. A lot of Egovanias follow along with Symphony of the Night's game design, particularly with the structure of the map, the order of progression abilities, the nature of your character getting stronger over time, the nature of farming enemies for random drops, getting specific items that you can equip, and of course the nature of having different endings, and some of the endings being vastly different than others, allowing you to see a different side of the game that you might not have otherwise seen. Yeah, this is pretty much the gold standard. If Metroid set the Labyrinth style of map design, Symphony of the Night was the one that set the standard of incorporating seamlessly RPG mechanics into that kind of game design. So I think it's a gold standard for a reason. First playthrough is a bit difficult, especially in the early game, Symphony of the Night is, but a common sentiment people share with this game is the game gets too easy after like a certain period of time, which I think is agreeable. The bosses especially are not great in Symphony of the Night. I think it's the weakest point of the game. But in terms of the exploration, in terms of the movement, in terms of the number of things you can do in the game that offer like a personalized gameplay experience, I think it's aged extremely well. And considering as a game it came out in 1997, it's very impressive in its own right. But yeah, First playthrough, especially blind, is a little bit rough, especially early game. But once you get into the flow, I think it's one of the best, for sure. A lot of Metroidvania chatter I've been seeing you guys discuss. Oh dear, Hollow Knight. We're gonna talk about that game. I'm not gonna talk about it in length, but it's not gonna be positive, let's say that. You're stuck on the first mini boss for Soden? Yeah. Like, yeah, Soden early game, first playthrough is a bit difficult. But like as you get more comfortable, like I'd say just give it a few tries, farm some enemies if you need to get a bit higher levels or just more stats in general. The game is meant to be played by anybody, so yeah. It was revolutionary when it came out. Yeah, dude. This game it's the gold standard. It's not, I don't think it's the best Metroidvania. It's not going to be at the very top here, but it's gold standard for a reason, for sure. Okay, next is Metroid Samus Returns. So I haven't finished this game, but I've gone past the halfway point of the game. What was the last progression ability I picked up? I forgot. I've been kind of putting this on hold for a while, but it's pretty dumb of a reason why. Like, I got stuck on this one part where the enemies deal like a bunch of damage to you, and there's not a lot of save points nearby, so I just been a chicken. But in terms of what I played so far, so I played this game after playing Metroid Dread. So, and from what I understand, from what I've read, this game was like the early version of what formed Metroid Dread later on, like in terms of the controls, for sure. But it's a 3DS game, so you have to keep in mind that you have these controls on a 3DS, right? And I think the controls on the 3DS are a little rough, especially with the touchscreen. Basically, in Samus Returns, oh yeah, let me quickly read this message. You're very interested to hear a negative opinion on Hollow Knight. You really struggle to think of any negative thing to say about it, besides long treks back to some bosses. Yeah, I mean, I haven't gotten very far into it, so I'm not gonna yap too much at length, but I am going to give my negative expressions of feelings from what I've played so far. I'm sure you'll understand the thought process behind what I'm saying, though. But yeah, Samus Returns, right? Yeah, jarring coming from Dread, right? Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the game is fine. Like, especially, I think it feels more open than Dread, which I personally like. Makes it feel like more of a Metroidvania proper. But that being said, the controls are pretty rough. You have to use the touchscreen to switch your weapons between like ice missiles, regular missiles, and the wave beam and the Eon abilities. It's a little weird. I wish they incorporated the select button or using the additional buttons that the new 3DS has, but I guess you can't really do that if it's support for 3DS as well. But yeah, controls are rough. Gameplay is fine. I think the combat is not really much to talk about. I mean, it's extremely basic. The enemy design is a little bit annoying, I will say. Like, there's a lot of flying enemies, and a lot of them are weird to interact with because you have to deal with the controls that the game has, especially playing on a DS. And the flying enemies move really fast, so it's kind of awkward. You have to use the parry a lot against the flying enemies. But thankfully the parry exists. Without the parry, I think this game would be a lot harder for me to get through. The bosses so far have been pretty mid as well compared to Dread. But from what I understand, Dread has like great bosses, so that's no surprise probably. It doesn't lock you into paths as much, but all versions of Metroid 2 are very linear. Yeah, I think Samus Returns felt a lot more open within each area, I should say. Like, within an area, you can pretty much target any Metroid you want, for the most part, in any order. Felt like a lot more open. But obviously, between area to area, there's pretty much only one way to go, right? But in terms of like where you go within one area, it's like pretty open from what I played so far. Yeah. But yeah, Samus Returns, I haven't released a verdict on that one yet. Of course, I haven't finished it. But so far, if I had to like judge it based on what I played so far, which is a good amount of it, I would say decent so far. It's fine. But I'll wait till I get to the end to put out a proper verdict. Alright, Pseudoregalia next. This is another disappointing game as far as the Metroidvania is concerned. This game I played last year. It was the first blind playthrough I did last year. Boy oh boy was that a experience. It's a really cool 3D platformer. This is like a 3D Metroidvania, by the way, guys. It's a really cool 3D platformer. Like a lot of great movement, nice level structure for incorporating the cool movement techniques you have access to. The style of the game is really cool, given that it's like meant to be retro inspired from like N64 games. But that being said, the Metroidvania progression is pretty rough. When I played it, there was no map, and that's really bad for a game like this. Not only are you adding the third dimension, but this game in particular is super non-linear. Like as soon as you get to the second area of the game, you can pretty much go anywhere with what you've got, and it's overwhelming. Like you have to remember the places you went, you have to remember how you backtracked, you have to remember the layouts of the rooms so that you don't like run in circles and stuff. And then there's some parts of the game where it's not clear what the game expects you to be able to do to traverse it. Like whether the game expects you to be able to traverse it with what you have currently. Like basically early parts in the game, you get the first major progression ability, which is the kicks, the wall kicks. And it's pretty clear what you can do with those, right? You can do a lot with them to reach new areas. But then later on, there's a couple progression abilities that you get, and it's like a big jump in between what was expected to be before and what's expected to be after, between different parts that require that progression ability. So you're not sure if you can make it with it, right? It's like if you have like a jump, like how do I describe it? It's like, let's say you had like I don't know, like you had it's kind of hard to show this right now. If I had MS Paint maybe, but let's say you had like a staircase of platforms, and one of the platforms is like 1 higher, and another platform is like 4 higher than where you are, right? And you're expected to be able to hit both with what you currently have. Basically, the difference between like both of those heights is so massive that you're not sure if you're expected to be able to make it, even if you can barely make it, right? And there's also points early on in the game where if you were to go for that platform that's like 4 blocks high, it would be considered a sequence break, and then you'd have to like think back to what you should have been able to do or what you were expected to be able to do, so that you go back on track with what the game expects you to do from then on. And then the last part that made me like exceptionally frustrated with this game was this is like minor spoilers, so sorry if any of you are gonna play it, but there's a part where you have to go through an area blind, like it's really dark, and you have to go through the area, and once you get through that area, the progression ability you get allows you to get through that area without the darkness. It's so unbelievably dumb. It's like, and then after you get that progression ability to get back through the darkness, there's only one other part you need that progression ability for, and that's it. And even in speedruns, the speedruns don't even get that progression ability. Like it's just so bad. And there's a couple other progression abilities that are not great. Like they're not useful, or they seem like a little shoehorned, basically. Like there's just like a lot of disparity with some of the progression abilities. Like some of them are like insanely useful that it feels like you don't need much more. Like you can do so much with it that it's like a little overwhelming. And then some of them it feels like, okay, this like unlocked one door to one path that I can finally take, and that's it. So yeah, I think it's a little rough on the edges with as a Metroidvania, but as a 3D platformer, it's cool. I think a lot of people on Steam would disagree with me, and they can disagree. I mean, I don't think this is a good Metroidvania, but I think it's fine as a 3D platformer. It's interesting to note that this game had the same level designer as Vernal Edge did, and it shows. My goodness, does it show. Like, I'm just going to say that. I'm not even going to elaborate on that. I'm just going to say it shows. That's it. Yeah, what's up, Zenrik? What's up? Saw Pseudoregalia on the list. Yeah. Another Metroid 2 remake. Yeah, I heard a lot of good things about it. I'll check it out too. Hear a lot of good things about it. Like, that's like the thing that everyone raves about on r/Metroidvania. Well, I say that, but lately I've had a bit of jaded feelings for r/Metroidvania's recommendations. But that's a whole nother matter. Alright, moving on. Ori and the Blind Forest. So this was played last year during a blind race. I like this game a lot. It's enjoyable. I like this game a lot. I do think it's on the linear side, but it's not like a bad kind of linear. I think it's linear mostly because it's not a big game, right? It's a pretty small game. So there's not really much you can venture out of the intended path in general. But this game gets so sick once you get the bash ability. Like, it's kind of not as interesting at the start of it. And in general, I think the combat is not great. Actually, that's something I forgot to mention about Pseudoregalia. The combat is super forgettable. And there's not even like, I think there's only 2 bosses in the whole game. Combat feels like an afterthought in Pseudoregalia. I don't think it needed to have it, but anyway. Yeah, Ori the Blind Forest. So yeah, combat in Ori the Blind Forest is like not anything exceptional. But where it's like not exceptional combat, it makes up for in like the movement and the environments and in general like the how the world expands and opens up as you progress throughout the game. This game doesn't really have bosses. It relies more on like movement set pieces and escape sequences as opposed to bosses, but they're all fun. And it helps that moving in the game feels good. Personally, when I played it during the blind race, I had a lot of issues with frame rate, so I couldn't get the full enjoyable experience. I probably would put it in upper echelon if I did get that enjoyable experience, but unfortunately, that slightly ruined my enjoyment of the game. Like, maybe I'll have to replay it and see if I enjoy it better on like a higher frame rate or whatever. But yeah, this game is good. This game is good. If any of you haven't played it, I think it's definitely worth playing. The bash is like basically taken straight out of Order of Ecclesia's Magnus ability, and it's incorporated well. Ori is one you need to try sometime. You played Ori and Will of the Wisps a while back and you loved it. Bash is such an awesome ability. Yeah, it's great. Like that makes the game. It literally makes the game. Like, just amazing platforming for that reason. It's definitely more platforming focused than combat focused, but another thing too, like the hot saves you can do in this game, it's a nice idea. Makes it so that you can kind of set up your exploring path however you'd like. Yeah. There's a couple of outdated quality of life features in this game, but I mean, let's be honest, that applies for a lot of the other Metroidvanias we're going to rank in high regard, so we'll evaluate it within its context, I guess, but otherwise, great game. Okay, next is Order of Ecclesia. Speaking of which, so yeah, Order of Ecclesia. I'd say this is a hard one to rank. This game is very unusual, even within the Castlevania series. Basically, it's a Metroidvania, yeah, but the first like 2/3 of the game are played in a relatively linear level-based structure where you basically like each individual level is like a mini Metroidvania, and after you beat that level, then you unlock like the next area level and you go to that one and you collect progression abilities in sequence in this way, and you can always go back to any area you've previously cleared or previously been to, as long as you have the fast travel there or you have been there once. But yeah, once you get to the second part of the game, which, minor spoiler, you need to meet certain conditions to get there, but basically once you get to the second part of the game, that's where it becomes like a proper, you know, Metroidvania Castlevania game that we're used to seeing from other Metroidvania Castlevania games. I think this one is enjoyable. I think for a time I did think it was upper echelon, but I'm gonna be honest, like, playing some more Metroidvania since then, I think this game is enjoyable. The first time I played it was part of the first blind race we've ever done on this channel. That was back in 2023, the end of 2023. Yeah, what a game. I mean, I think the bosses are a little bit all over the place. Like, a lot of bosses are great, and then this game simultaneously has some of the most abhorrent bosses you could ever think of in like a platformer. Like auto scroller, waste your time, crab boss. Like, this game was what, like, among our crew, like that blind races stuff on this channel, this like formed in our heads the conception of the crab boss trope of bosses in the games we played, because that crab boss in this game is just uniquely bad boss design in my opinion. Like, it's one of those bosses where no matter how good you get at it, you still have to just wait. It's just bad. And there's auto-scrolling sections of it too. Like, it's not a fun boss to fight. Especially not your first time figuring it out. And then there's the other boss, the horse boss, Eligor. Eligor is not good. But the highs of this game's bosses are cool. I think what's that guy's name? The shadow boss. I forgot his name, but the shadow boss is great. The death in this game is great too. There's a lot of other good bosses, but yeah, this game simultaneously has Wallman and Crab Boss and Eligor, so yikes. The gimmick of this game was the glyphs, which I think was cool. It made it so that you had to actually use different loadouts quite often throughout the game, which, you know, might be something that a lot of people don't like, having to switch between loadouts quite often, but I think in this game it's fine. There's not a lot of inventory bloat, so it's not a big deal. Progression abilities, it's not like super insane either, but they definitely give you a ton of movement options, especially once you get the hidden Redire, however you pronounce it. When you get that from the hidden area, like, the movement becomes insane. But the fact that that's hidden behind several breakable walls, it's like the game's best kept secret. So, and a blind playthrough would be impossible to find. And on that note, this game has kind of too many breakable wall secrets. I think it's not something that ages very well over time. It's cool it's cool for the time, but then after a while, it's like, okay, come on now. But yeah. That's Order of Ecclesia, we'll put it there. Just below Ori. Alright, next we got the Messenger. Ooh. The Messenger, oh no. Oh no. So this game is an indie platformer Metroidvania. Retro inspired for sure, arcade inspired as well. Great music. Great first half of the game. I think the Metroidvania part of the game is actually the low point for me. It doesn't feel very connected. It doesn't feel like it flows well. There's a lot of things that just break the flow of Metroidvania progression in the second part of the game. Like having to get 5 billion different MacGuffins that serve no purpose aside from just getting to the next part of the game. Like, it's just like, ugh. Becomes a search for the MacGuffin fest in the Metroidvania part. And it's a shame because I like the environments of each area a lot, especially in the late game. And the bosses are cool too. Like, this is a good game if you just disregard the Metroidvania part. And that's why I am going to put it in decent, but like, man, the Metroidvania part was just such a letdown for me personally, because I loved everything else. Bosses were great, music was great, combat felt fun, and movement felt fun. It's very simple, but there's like a lot of depth in being able to reset your jumps by hitting enemies. But it's just like the Metroidvania part, man. You're just running around looking for the one place where the exact MacGuffin is, because basically the Metroidvania part, it's like fake non-linear. It's like trying to be non-linear, but the reality is that you need one MacGuffin to get to the next one. Yeah, MacGuffin finding is one downside of the Prime games. Oh no, yeah. And yeah, Messenger is just egregious in that part of the game. But again, I think most people find it to be a good game, and Steam indicates that for sure. But me personally, I'm not a huge fan of MacGuffin Fest, so like it just broke the flow so much, in my opinion. And there's a bunch of like cryptic things that I just use the hint NPC to find, which, you know, I guess some players can just find it on their own, but there's some puzzling quality of life around like the hint system and the map in general. Like the map doesn't really do the game any favors for trying to find the things that you want to find. So that's just a quality of life trouble there. Yeah. But it's a decent game. We played it as part of the blind race last year. Alright, next is Prince of Persia Lost Crown. Ooh, this is a good one. So I think this one goes in upper echelon. This game I played last year. Like around when it came out. Not right when it came out, but like a little bit after. Loved this game. Love this game. This game, I think a lot of the things I liked about it weren't necessarily part of like the Metroidvania components of the game, but basically the main reason why I ended up liking the game as a Metroidvania like at the end of the day regardless was because the feature where you can like snap like a photo basically of the part of the map you can't access so that you come back to it later. Like the quality of life in this game is insane. It's so good. So good. It makes it so easy to actually like play the game as a Metroidvania and go back to stuff that you're interested in going back to later once you get a new progression ability. Like the flow of this game is just so buttery smooth for that reason alone. I will say that the fast travel was not that good when I played the game, but thankfully in an update released after I finished playing the game, and this was literally one of the things I said in my verbal review, they added the ability to fast travel between save points as a purchasable upgrade. So that makes the fast travel of the game way better than it was when I played it. That was the one complaint I had for the game. But even beyond that, like everything else is great. The combat is amazing. The boss fights are super fun. The movement is great. Like it's one of the best feeling games to move in because you have so much control of your character. You can cancel between a lot of things. If you see speedruns of this game, they're just madness. They're just insane. The progression abilities are super creative and well thought out. The puzzle platforming sections, the parkour, especially the area that's like the library, there's a lot of cool puzzles in that area, and navigating the area is a lot of fun. The enemy design I think is hit or miss. Most of the enemies are great. The enemies that are in the sewer area I did not like that much at all, but I think that's just because I don't like poison enemies or enemies that, you know, punish you for taking one singular hit from them. But yeah, for the most part, enemy design was great. Bosses, I already said, were great too. Maybe one part I can knock this game down for is the story. The story is like fine. It's like, you know, it's comprehensible, I guess, and then you just kind of move on. But it's not what you're playing the game for, in my opinion. You're playing the game for the gameplay. You know what I mean? So yeah, I see you guys saying like, yeah, you've been meaning to try Prince of Persia. Yeah, I definitely recommend this one. This is like one of the big releases of last year in the Metroidvania genre, I would say. Some people also say Nine Souls was last year. No comment. How about that? No comment. But Prince of Persia is definitely one of the big releases of last year. Yeah, highly recommend this one. Like, I know it says Ubisoft, but trust me, this is like an actually good game. Okay. And I played it on the second highest difficulty, but honestly, you can play on any difficulty and it's chill. It's not that bad. Alright, next is Hollow Knight. Oh dear. Can we skip this one? No, I'm kidding. So Hollow Knight, I've played 4 hours of this game, okay? So it's have not finished here. But my 4 hours of this game, I was not very impressed with. And there's a reason why I've only played 4 hours so far. So what I like about this game so far The game looks pretty. I like the aesthetic. It's very dark and gloomy, but not in a draining way. Not in a way that makes you super unsettled, but just more so in a mysterious way. The combat is a little bit basic, I guess. I don't know. But it's clearly not a focus so far, and it's not something I would really complain about yet, because the boss fights have been pretty solid from what I've played. They've been fun. But I think it's carried by like the platforming and the exploration. The exploration is marvelous in this game so far. The areas just expand and open up like you're playing like one of the OGs of the Metroidvania genre, like, you know, the Castlevania Symphony of the Night, or the games from the Metroidvania games from that time period, you know. Like, I feel like I've yet to play many Metroidvanias that feel as explorative as Hollow Knight has felt. That being said, why would they incorporate corpse running of all the things they could have brought in from Souls-like games, man? Why would they have brought in corpse running in a game where you are incentivized to explore because of the nature of the map design and, you know, of course the humming NPC, the way the areas are structured, the way you can pretty much venture wherever you want, in the part of the game I'm on at least. Why would they have corpse running? It just makes it so that if you want to keep your money, you're locked on the path that you died on, which it just doesn't make any sense. It disincentivizes exploration in a game that's supposed to incentivize exploration. And that's the main reason why I've yet to really pick this game back up. Like, I'm not a fan of it. And a lot of the exploring I'm on feels like I'm just playing the minigame of find the humming NPC so that I can actually see where I'm going, so I can uncover the map. And the save points are not very frequent. To me, it feels like they put save points to keep you on edge, but didn't put them in a way that thoughtfully allows for you to like plan out your route, or like, you know, like there are some games you can play where like you can feel like a save point coming because it's been like that amount of time, right? But Hollow Knight, it just feels kind of arbitrary. And fast travel is pretty infrequent as well from what I've gathered so far, but yeah, I'm not too impressed with the game yet. 4 hours isn't much to judge Hollow Knight on. It's a big game. Yeah. I knew going into this that expressing my thoughts would be a bit contentious, right? But I had to express them somewhere. You have no experience with Souls games? Perhaps for the best. No, I'm kidding. But I can't say I'm a big fan of the Souls-like tropes, you know? There's a guy in Dirtmouth who can summon your shade for you if you don't want to go back for it. It requires fairly rare pickups to do it, but that's all they're for, so you found that you always have a few. Prince of Persia should be at the bottom. The game was atrocious. What's up, Iron Rex? I'm sorry to hear that. And see, that's the great thing about these games. You can have someone that believes this game to be the best game ever made, and you can have someone who just doesn't see it. You know what's crazy? You're seeing young people today speedrun games in an hour or less that you spent days or weeks as kids trying to beat. Yeah. Speedruns are getting more and more optimized with some of these games. It's crazy. But yeah, alright. Hollow Knight, enough with that. I think I've established my position on it for now. I will get back to it, but I'm not super eager at the moment, so just know that. And I definitely won't be playing it on stream. Alright. Next, we've got Harmony of Dissonance, Castlevania game. This is the GBA Castlevania game. The second one. This is a game that kind of had mixed opinions among the Castlevania enjoyers, enthusiasts. I think even people from the outside looking in didn't see this game very kindly. I think this is one of the most misunderstood games in the Castlevania series. And what I mean by misunderstood is like underappreciated. I think this game is upper echelon. Now, I do have to defend myself because I am on the hot seat right now, especially after the Hollow Knight opinions. But this game requires like a very, how do I say it? It requires a very patient mindset when you're playing it, especially when it comes to exploration. Now, I will say there's some old game garbage that kind of brings this game down towards the mid-late, but again, we're evaluating these games for the most part within the context that they came out in. But yeah, this game, I think, had one of the most ambitious castle designs out of the Castlevania Metroidvania games, and it works really well. The map layout is very labyrinthian. Like, you feel like you're in a maze, or you feel like you're really exploring, right? But thankfully, the game also has great movement. So otherwise, it would be intolerable, right? I don't think anyone would put up with the map design of this game if the movement were poor. The movement's really good. And not to mention the movement being good. The fast travel is fine, but the issue is that the fast travel you get in late game is definitely what you feel like should have been given in the early game. That's how I felt after finishing it for the first time, personally at least. But yeah, movement is really good, and I do like the combat of this game. I know a lot of people think that the whip combat doesn't belong in Castlevania anymore, Metroidvania Castlevania games. I think in this game it works perfectly fine, because you can move with pretty high agility, and you have the spells and sub-weapons available, which I think was pretty clever to have in this game, because it expands upon, you know, the basic functionality of the whip, while still having depth that's like feels within reach for a first-time player. It's not completely out there like, you know, Symphony of the Night with spell inputs, or I don't know, Aria of Sorrow with the numerous souls that are in the game, right? Like, at least in Harmony of Dissonance, it feels like the first-time player can actually just mess around with whatever sub-weapons or spells they get to see what is produced. Now, issues with the game, and I do hear you guys on this one if you say it, the bosses are, for the most part, pretty bad. I feel like the two good bosses in this game, maybe just one good boss, to be honest. But yeah, like, Maxim is a good boss. Like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'm having a hard time naming any other good boss, to be honest. Yeah. Like for what it's worth though, if this game had intricate bosses, this would be a nightmare to play on the GBA with the whip, and you know, given that the controls are the way they are. I think if the bosses had been any other way, it might have been too hard of a game. The bosses are just right for this kind of game, to be honest, but even then, I don't think they're great. Because basically, by the time you get to endgame, the only quote-unquote difficulty of the bosses is how much damage they do per hit, which is not super interesting. Especially the final boss, it's kind of lame. But overall, map design, exploration, movement, which are kind of important in a Metroidvania, I think are great in this one. And I should mention the music. The music in Harmony of Dissonance, another misunderstood component. This is one of my favorite Castlevania OSTs, the Harmony of Dissonance OST. It's great. The compositions are amazing. It might not sound great on the ears in the GBA sound, but trust me, the compositions are genius. They're genius. So, for context on the 4 hours comment, it took you 30 hours just to get the fastest ending. You're 75 hours in now. Yeah, I hear it does take quite a while to finish it, so don't worry, I totally get it. It's been at least 15 years since you played the GBA Castlevania games. We remember them all being great. Yeah, they're awesome. But yeah, playing them on the original Game Boy Advance SP, very difficult for sure. I personally played Harmony Dissonance in my first playthrough on the NDS Fat, and it was still a little bit rough on the hands. But yeah, okay. There we go for that game. Next we got Metroid Fusion. This was the first Metroid game I played. Yeah, this was a pretty good impression of the Metroid series, I would say. Very short game, but I didn't think it was a bad thing that it was short. I think it expressed all that it needed to efficiently. Like, it was efficient game time spent. This game, I think, gave me a great first impression of the Metroid side of the Metroidvania genre. I'll place it in upper echelon. Yeah, I think I'll place it in upper echelon. I don't think the bosses were anything too memorable, but pretty much everything else about the game was great. The progression abilities were amazing. I really liked that the progression abilities that you thought were just keys were actually things that were expanding upon your combat capabilities, which I think is a consistent Metroidism from what I've noticed, especially after playing Dread. That the keys are not just keys. You are getting more powerful in your combat capabilities over time, which feels proper for a Metroidvania, I'd say. Without outright incorporating RPG mechanics, I think it's a clever way to integrate progression. What else? I think the platforming felt weird for me to do, but I just wasn't used to the controls. The controls felt really weird when I was like in the first hour of the game. Yeah. Controls felt very weird, but understanding where to go was very clear, and I think the structure of the map design as far as the Metroidvania is concerned, with like backtracking, just general traversal, felt smooth. There wasn't breakage. There wasn't like things that stopped the flow of, you know, getting through the game. If anything, I think the bosses were what stopped the flow. The SAX is like, from what I understand, Metroid has a lot of like sequence set pieces kind of thing, so I didn't really think anything of it, positive nor negative. But overall, it was a good first impression of a Metroid game, I would say. Fusion is kind of the black sheep of 2D games, really. I gotta get to Super Metroid soon, which I will do. That will come. That will happen. I might reevaluate Metroid Fusion after that, so we'll see. Fusion's bosses really killed the flow. Yeah. I mean, like, I didn't care for them. Like, they're whatever to me, but I definitely enjoyed the other parts of the game more than the bosses. I'll say that. From your experience, when you start with a great game, anything of its time is hard to beat in the future. You thought those two games were a great return to form. Yeah, that makes sense. The order you play games in definitely like has an effect on your perspective for sure. Yes, play Super Metroid. Yeah, that is going to happen, and you guys will be the first to see when that happens. All right, so yeah, Metroid Fusion goes there. Metroid Dread, the sister game, the game that follows along in the same story as far as I know. Builds upon the story, let's put it that way. Loved this game. I think it goes here. I don't think it's gold standard yet, but I might move it up to gold standard later on. But this game was like life-changing when I played it. Like, there are a few games where I'm like, yeah, I mean, when I say it like that, it sounds like it should go in gold standard. I mean, I think it really is gold standard, but I just need a few more Metroidvanias to play before I move it up there. But yeah, Dread was a great time. That was one of the most enjoyable games I recently played. For those of you that don't know, I played this game this year. That was one of the first blind playthroughs I did this year. A couple years late, I feel bad about it because I'm like, man, I really missed out on one of the treasures of the genre. Overall, I think this game was like felt like what a complete Metroid experience might feel like, and I guess it'll be confirmed or unconfirmed after I play Super Metroid. But yeah, like it felt like it incorporated all the isms, like the enemy design, same core components from Fusion, from what I could tell. Great movement. The controls were a bit of a learning curve at first. It took me a while to get used to them, but after a while it felt like they were just right. It felt like what they needed to be. The enemies, you know, you could say they're basic, but I think they didn't... The enemies... How to say it? The enemies served their purpose well because they didn't ruin... They didn't try to like take too much attention. I think that's the best way to put it. Like, you know, if you're like, you know, like you're sitting in a classroom and there's like the one person that's trying to draw attention to themselves, right? Like the enemies in Metroid Dread weren't like that. Like I think they're the right level of they were the right fit for this kind of game. Struggling to find the words to put it, but yeah. Bosses were amazing. Bosses in Metroid Dread, like, major glow up from Fusion, to be honest. Like, if anything, I'm kind of afraid that Metroid Dread is setting, like, the standard of what bosses in a Metroid game are like in my head, because playing Samus Returns is, like, such a drastic difference in the bosses. Like, my goodness. Like, I'm super engaged in the Metroid Dread boss fights. And Samus Returns is like, like, you know, I'm fighting an Isaac boss kind of thing, you know? And in Samus Returns, you kind of fight the same boss over and over, to be honest. Whereas Metroid Dread, it feels like every boss is like made to have a lasting impact on you, and you're like smiling for like 3 hours after you fight the boss, basically. That kind of thing. It's pure euphoria. But yeah, bosses and enemies and combat aside, movement felt great, as I said, but platforming especially felt good. And I think the way the enemies were incorporated with like the platforming side of things, I could see why people wouldn't like it. I thought I wouldn't like it personally, but playing through the game, it actually felt fine. Especially the fact that the enemies are gone completely after you get the cutscene kill on them. They're gone completely and you can explore that area to your heart's content, so it felt like a good compromise. Yeah, so that being said, the progression abilities, I think most of them are fine. There were so many progression abilities collected one after the other. Like the density was a bit too high. And there were some parts in the game where it felt like I didn't have enough time with a certain progression ability before getting the next one. I don't know how to feel about that. Especially with the fact that the game oftentimes locks you from veering off the path so that you go on the path they designate. Like it's linear at heart, but I don't know if I appreciate that the paths are locked in certain points in the game. It doesn't happen super often, but when it does happen, it sets the wrong tone because it makes you think that you're not going to have the path available again for like a future point in time. So it sets the wrong impression, you know. But I can barely complain about this game. Like I'm grasping at straws to find complaints for this game. This is like probably going to be the highest ranking game in this tier and might move up to gold standard after I play a few more games. Wonderful game. Contrary to most people's thoughts too, I like the music in this game, but for a very specific reason. And if you want to know that reason, go watch my blind playthrough of this game. The VODs are all on this channel. I put them in a playlist because that's a game I want to have as a treasured memory after having played it. So go watch it if you want to hear my thoughts on the music after the YouTuber thing. You think Dread and Super are actually pretty different? Dread is a lot of focus on movement combat, and Super is a big focus on freedom of exploration. Yeah. And that's a cool, like, it's a cool distinction to have, because then I can enjoy different things about them. And I do enjoy both, but the fact that one is highlighted over the other in one game versus the other might allow for me to like them both, despite them being extremely different. Super doesn't lock you in the intended path as much as Dread, and you're very open to break the sequence. Yeah, I heard about the reverse boss order. The video from Dragon Blitz talking about the speedrun that allows you to beat the boss in reverse order. That's so crazy. You can do that in Symphony of the Night as well, but there's some weirdness with that one. It's not exact. And it's a very hard speedrun. Pretty much only Dragon Blitz does that speedrun. But yeah, anyway. Dread, great game. Alright, next is Record of Lodoss War, Deedlit, and Wonder Labyrinth. The game is the name of the game is a mouthful. The game itself, not so much of a mouthful. This game is very short and sweet. It's very linear. It feels like, thinking back to it, it's almost like a Metroid Fusion in how short it is. And like the way the map is structured too. Like, okay, not the way the map is structured. It's more so like the way the progression takes you between areas is similar to Metroid Fusion. But that being said, it's not like Metroid at all. It's more like Castlevania, to be honest. Like, this game is the Vania side of Metroidvania, for sure. Very, very short. How do I describe this game? Like, it takes pretty much all the Vania inspirations and condenses them, trimming away a lot of the fat and allowing for pretty much anyone to enjoy the Metroidvania genre without previously needing like Egovania experience or needing to understand, like, you know, the weirdness of all the different requirements you need for a certain ending in Castlevania games. Like this one, you can just attack it head on and have a good time. That being said, I think pretty much everything about this game was good, but it's just that it's good. I don't think it's like exceptional of a game. Yeah, it is a mouthful indeed. Yeah, I don't think this game is exceptional. I think it's just everything is good and that's it. Like, I would put it in enjoyable. Probably above Ecclesia though. No, okay, not above Ecclesia. That's a little much. But yeah, like everything else in this game is good. I think after a while you kind of understand what the game is about. Like you know when you're listening to someone in a conversation and you're like, get to the point, right? And they get to the point and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, this game gets to the point like pretty quickly, and then the rest of it is like a formality. And you're like, okay, I got it. Like, it's a fun game, but it's not doing anything like particularly revolutionary. If anything, it's just fun. It's just a fun game to play. And I do recommend it, but it's not like a dramatic or life-changing Metroidvania necessarily. Yeah. But it's very short, so if you don't have a lot of time, this is the game for you. Some people have torn it down recently. Oh, Castlevania 2 is your favorite Castlevania? There, you met that guy. Uh-oh. I haven't played that game, but I've heard certain things about it. I've heard certain things about it for sure. I've heard that it is like technically a bit non-linear, but yeah. Some people have torn it down recently, but you would recommend Demon's Crest on SNES if I've never played it. It's your favorite SNES game aside from Super Metroid. I'll check it out then. I'll check that one out. Is that like just a linear platformer, or is it a Metroidvania adjacent? All right, next is Dawn of Sorrow. No, it's not. Ah, okay. Oh, it's a Metroidvania. Okay, understood. Wow, a Metroidvania from that time period, huh? A Metroidvania that's not Metroid or Castlevania? Okay. Dawn of Sorrow, I think it goes here. So Dawn of Sorrow is like a more polished Aria of Sorrow. That's how I personally felt about it after finishing. But I think Aria of Sorrow is just better, to be honest. Better overall. Like, when I say polished, I mean like in terms of being more modernized. Like, the features are more balanced. The game has more mature communication of what it's about. Like, you know, things that you'd expect from like playing a modern game versus like a game from like the 90s or 2000s. That's how I feel like Dawn versus Aria feels. Dawn is a good Metroidvania. It's a good Metroidvania Castlevania game. It's fun to play. I mean, I think the seal system is not as bad as people say, but it is pretty bad. Well, that's my thoughts on it. The seals are cool, but it is definitely like forced touchscreen gimmick that is not really necessary. But to be honest, I don't think it's as bad as people say, personally. Like, people over complain about it. If there's anything to complain about this game, it's the final boss. The final boss is so obnoxious in this game, and it's a huge letdown. Like, I think it's one of the worst final bosses in the whole series. Especially if you're coming from Aria. You're coming from Aria final boss, where it's like the sickest thing in the world, or one of the sickest things, to this game where the final boss is like so dreadful, so toxic. Like, the final boss is like worse than an Isaac boss. Like, Isaac boss, what I mean by that is like a boss that just spawns enemies and that's it, right? Like, the final boss in Dawn, all it does is spawn enemies and occasionally like raises or extends its limbs to punch you, and it does like a bunch of damage and pushes you back. But there's like nothing interesting about its attack patterns at all. Like, it's literally just like, do you have enough sustain to get all the damage you need to finish the boss off? And by then you should have enough sustain, but it's not a fun or interesting boss fight at all. But everything else the game is great. Progression abilities are cool. It's nice to see that they incorporated the quality. Actually, this is the first Castlevania game to incorporate the quality of life with the different loadouts. So you can hot swap your loadout without opening the menu. That was a huge improvement over Aria. Because Aria, you had to always open the menu to equip Skula, unequip Skula, equip Undine, unequip Undine, switch between different souls that you want to use for certain boss fights, switch back to Panther, blah blah blah. Like, it's clunky, right? Dawn improves that with the hot swapping of loadouts. Combat's great. Most of the bosses are fine. I think the areas are... they're not like the best Castlevania areas, to be honest. I mean, most of them are good, but... I don't know. I mean, this is a good Castlevania game, but... And you can see I'm putting it above Heart and Distance despite not saying a ton of great things about it. But basically, like, Aria is already a good game, and Dawn built on Aria, so like it's already going to be that good, right? But I don't think it's like I don't think it's like all that necessarily. It was fun though. I liked it a lot. All right. See what you liked most about Blasphemous? The first couple of bosses were easy, but their attack patterns got progressively hard as the game went on, at least in the first one. Yeah, I like it when the game gets harder as you get better. You can play as Yoko in Dawn of Sorrow, so Dawn of Sorrow is greater than Aria of Sorrow for that alone. Okay, true. Honestly, the New Game Plus from Dawn is pretty good. Like, surprisingly good. But nah, I don't think we're gonna rank it that much higher. Yeah, bro, no way. I'm not gonna rank it higher just for that. Okay. Circle. Oh dear. Circle's decent, but I'm gonna be honest, I didn't beat this game legit. I used the DSS glitch, but to be fair, the DSS glitch is how the game should have been to begin with anyway. So in my defense, like, I am not dealing with the random card drops to to progress through the game, dude. I'm sorry. This game is a little rough compared to the other GBA Castlevanias. Like, it's a little jank in the controls. It's very slow and akin to like the old Castlevania games, but as a game in its own right, it's fine. I just don't think it's the best of the Metroidvania Castlevanias by any means. It's not one I would go back to, other than the fact that it's so different from all the other ones. Because it is fine as a Metroidvania. Like, the map design is cool, the bosses are fun, but navigating through the game is a chore, because it's just not a smooth feeling game like that. It just still has the old residue from Castlevanias before Symphony of the Night. But it's not a bad game by any means. I think it's decent. Not much else to say about it, to be honest. I need to go back and play it legit. But I don't think my opinion would change really if I went back to play it normally. So, all right, next is Bloodstained. We just finished this one last night. Wow. So, okay, honestly, if you want to hear my thoughts on this game, just watch the VOD from last night. It's kind of hard to give all my thoughts again right now, but basically, this game incorporates all of the good polish and learnings that Igarashi took from his previous work on Castlevania Metroidvania games and put it into like a modern Metroidvania, right? But there were a lot of missed opportunities in furthering that polish and making it a fully formed modern game that it could have been, especially with its $5.5 million Kickstarter budget. I get they had a lot of limitations and challenges working with an indie team that wasn't necessarily experienced with this kind of thing. And, you know, obviously he doesn't have the, you know, the infinite Konami money this time to make extraordinary music or wonderful visuals or anything like that. But with what he had to work with, this game came out really well. It's fun to play. It has everything that makes a Castlevania game fun, and let alone a Metroidvania game fun. And honestly, this game has some of the best bosses out of any game I've played from Koji Igarashi. And that's saying something, because to be honest, like, bosses in Castlevania games are like all over the place. They range from really good to like really bad sometimes. And the boss in this game were solid, like a solid consistent good. Like, not just good, but like a solid consistent good. Like, I could think of outlier bosses that were not fun, but those were very far and few between. Yeah, I mean, this game is just a good Castlevania game, pretty much. I would put it in upper echelon. Feels kind of weird to do this, but I do think it's good. I think it would go above. I think it would go above those two. Not above Dawn, but I think it would go above the other two. Some things I think could have been improved on. Some absolutely baffling progression decisions towards late game. I'm not even gonna get back into it because just thinking about them disgusts me, but please do watch the verbal review from last night's VOD if you're interested in that. I think another thing too is the map itself could have used a few more indicators for like NPCs, for distinguishing areas from each other using like the red rooms as a divider. It could have perhaps given more information in the menus. I know the menus already give a ton of information, but honestly they need more information. I'm not even joking. Like, as an example, the ability to like craft certain things is nice, but you're not able to see the crafting paths in the menu. You have to go to the NPC to see it. I'm not sure if that's something the game could have benefited from having, but honestly, the crafting system in general, I think, is a little bloated. I don't know if it was fully necessary, especially with the food. At that point, like, I'm good with just getting the food straight up as a meal, either from the shop or, you know, eventually from an enemy drop, perhaps. I don't know. Shop probably would have made more sense, but point being, I think the crafting system is a little bit extraneous and wasn't necessary. It felt like just extra chores. Hurts to see these fathers of games genres get dumped by the companies they helped build and have to do Kickstarter products. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, Igarashi's been very forthright in interviews, so there's no secrets there. Hopefully, you know, he's given an opportunity to try to right the wrongs that Bloodstained made, because I do think he was more than capable of doing that, but there were just definitely some limitations with what he had to work with. But there are certain things that were also just kind of baffling and just didn't need to be the way they were. Like, I'm not even gonna get into it. Like, you guys either already know or you're gonna check out the VOD, right? So yeah, but the swim locked behind the random enemy drop is just, come on now, dude. We're not in 2003 anymore, okay? We're in 2019. Enough with that now. Okay. We got 2 more. And oh boy, are these 2 more good. Alright, next we've got Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. This is the gold standard. The gold standard. The gold standard. Better than Symphony of the Night, yes. The gold standard of Metroidvanias for me. This game is like the other life-changing game. Like if I had to pick the Metroid life-changing game, it would be like Metroid Dread, right? But I haven't gone through that many Metroid games, so, you know, whatever. Aria of Sorrow was like the game that helped me understand what a game should play like. Not just a Metroidvania, but a game. Like, a game should just be fun and, you know, feel like you can do whatever you want. And it's such an easy game to just get engrossed in. And it's not a long game at all, so even if you finish it quickly, you're still gonna have a good time with what you've played. It's not something that you're gonna loathe going back to because, you know, you got stuck on one part or whatever. I think the fact that it's a GBA game certainly helped with that, because it allowed for the expressions in the game to be condensed and focused. The soul system is such a clever thing to integrate. It incentivizes farming enemies, but it also improves your combat capabilities naturally. And it's something that's well integrated with progression as well, because they use the same system, the progression abilities and the enemy drop souls. Combat is great. People would think it's simple, but this is the most depth. Like, this is like the most in-depth combat you can make with what they had to work with in a game like this. The map design is fantastic. It's like how Symphony of the Night was in its map design, but, you know, condensed, removing all of the fat and ensuring that all the good parts are left in. Between going back to the shop the first time after you visit the study, between the fact that the arena is like its own area in the map that feels threatening, but you have a means of going back there whenever you want with the fast travel there. Underground reservoir feeling like a maze, and just in general being uncomfortable, but a good kind of uncomfortable. My favorite area, Floating Gardens, being very weird to first reach when you get there, but then once you understand how it works, it's like, wow, I can actually use this as an intermediary to get between places I want to go. Clock Tower is Clock Tower as Clock Tower always is in Castlevanias. The bosses in this game are good, but they're good in terms of like taking into account that it's a GBA game with, you know, the kind of combat this game has. They did a great job with what they had to work with for the bosses. And Julius is one of the sickest boss fights, along with Chaos in any Castlevania game. Julius and Chaos are amazing. Ballora is fun too, but I think the first time you fight Ballora is a little bit rough. But after that, he's pretty fun too. This game also has a great death fight. But yeah, no, I mean, Aria of Sorrow, hands down, the best Metroidvania I've played. Easily. And to this day, I speedrun it. I mean, I haven't been actively grinding because I've been on hold for that for the past months, but I do plan on getting back to any percent no zero HP in the near future. Once I tackle these games I have in my backlog, and once I have a submission ready for SGDQ for Afterimage, then I'll get back to Aria. But speedrunning is a bunch of fun too. Okay, yeah, so that's Aria. Not much else to say. I mean, I will say the music. I think the music's good, but I think it's overrated. I don't think it's that good. Like, it's a good Castlevania soundtrack, but I don't think it's like the best GBA soundtrack, like people say. Now you gotta go back and replay Aria. Dude, please do. Please do. Exploring the souls, figuring out what each of them can do, and leveraging some of the what's it called? Leveraging some of the techniques you can use with like the movement and the different weapons it's a lot of fun. Like, I think if you look at it from the perspective of, how to say it, like, it's a word efficient Metroidvania. Like, you know, you have like a word limit for some essay prompts. This is like the most optimal word efficient Metroidvania you can make, I think. Like, if you wanted to make a game that had the shortest amount of playtime but had all the fun parts about a Metroidvania in one game, then I think this would be it. And that's high regard. That's high regard. Would you recommend you keep playing Sodden or try Aria as a first-time CV player? I think you have a better time with Aria, to be honest. Aria's how to say it? Like, Sodden's an easier game overall, but I think Aria is an easier game to enjoy on your first playthrough. Like, Aria has like a bigger pool for like your first playthrough, but then Sodden has like the bigger pool for replaying, if that makes sense. But I also think Sodden's hard to play, like, I don't know, like Sodden's weird as your first ever Metroidvania for sure. Aria not so much, but Aria also, I think Sodden has much more to offer if you're trying to replay the game over and over. But that's because Sodden's like just has more in it, right? Aria's not as dense in what it has, but yeah, that's my thoughts on that. You'll give it a shot. You don't mind a challenge, but you're definitely finding it tough to get through early game in Sodden for sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, Aria is very reasonable in the difficulty scaling. Like, it's very smooth throughout. It's not. There's no spikes. There's a spike towards end game, but I mean, by then you're comfortable enough to be able to deal with it fine. If anything, the spikes are traversing. Like, some of the area. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Some of the areas are kind of weird to traverse. Reservoir for sure is weird, but I wouldn't say hard. I would just say weird. You think the RPG mechanics are part of the issue? You're struggling to find motivation to play it? Yeah, that's fair. It's definitely shoved more in your face in Sodden than it is in Aria. Aria, the main thing you want to know is that you get the souls of enemies when you kill them, but it's like a low % chance to drop, right? So it's like the incentive to kill enemies over and over, to farm them. But I think it works better for Aria than the weapon drops do in Sodden. But yeah. Coming from the Metro side of things, right? Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. They are two different games. They're two different game series for sure, but they overlap in like the, you know, the non-linear exploration, ability gated progression kind of thing, you know. All right, we got one more. I gotta save the best for last. Nah, this is not the best, but this is pretty close, I would say. It's Afterimage. So before I talk about this game, I just should just precursor this. This is obviously gonna have a lot of bias. Like, I feel like anytime you hear the perspective of the game from the person that speedruns the game, it's always going to be biased. Like, if someone that speedruns the game says the game is bad, then that's how you know you should probably stay away from it, right? But if you hear that the speedrunner says it's good, then you're like, oh, okay, yeah, fine, sure, I hear you. And then you kind of roll your eyes, right? Because, like, of course they're going to say it's good. But, nah, I mean, I'm not kidding when I say this game is upper echelon. I think it's actually gold standard, for that matter. But it's not going to go above the other two that I put in gold standard. I think this is the gold standard in terms of being, like, how to say it, like, it's a refocus to, like, what made the genre great, which is just the exploration, you know, like just having an extremely open map where you feel like every turn you make or every platform you jump up, you know, is where the possibilities are expanded exponentially. Not literally exponentially, but, you know, figuratively, right? This game is so open. It's kind of overwhelming, in fact. Overwhelmingly open. I think it's one of the biggest Metroidvanias nowadays. I think the only other ones that compare, from what I've heard, are... what was that game called? Is it Axiom Verge? Whatever that game was, that's also really big. And then Hollow Knight would be the other big one. But I think this game is bigger than Hollow Knight from what people have told me. But, you know, who cares about comparing which game is bigger? Like, no one really cares. This game is just it's a great return to the roots for the genre. Like, I just feel like it has what made the genre great to begin with, right? Like the allure of exploring, the wonder of coming across new progression abilities and new weapons and items, figuring out what you can do with them. This game's world and aesthetic is very beautiful. The story presentation and delivery is for sure the weakest point, and I think a lot of people on Steam complain about it, and it's very valid. Like, the delivery of the story is mumbo jumbo. I think it wouldn't be as much of a problem if the story weren't shown as important. Like, the way the game delivers a story makes it feel like it's important. So that's when you can't help but to notice how poor the delivery is. There's some games like Castlevania games where you're like, oh, the story is so basic and throwaway that you don't really have to pay attention to it, right? Yeah, bigger than Hollow Knight. Yeah, bigger than Hollow Knight for sure. Axiom Verge 1 was pretty big. Got it, yeah. So yeah, it's around that ballpark. But this game is huge. This game is massive. It'll take you a long time to beat it. At least for all endings. But yeah, game has wonderful combat. Like, it gives you so much flexibility, freedom. You can get creative with the weapon classes. You're allowed several cancel options. The movement is great. I think a lot of people complain about this game not having like an iframes on the dodge or dash or whatever. Like, come on now, are we babies or what? Like, just play the game. There's a reason why there's not iframes on the dash. But yeah, I will say, like, the bosses are kind of all over the place for this game. Some of them are really good, and some of them are like such throwaways and so forgettable. Like, you probably won't even remember the bosses in the game after you beat it. Like, that was the case for me. I was looking at some of the bosses in this game back because it's been a while since my first playthrough was done, and I'm like, man, that was in the game. Yeah, it's called Afterimage, the game we're talking about. Yeah, Afterimage, one word. Yep, Afterimage, one word. But yeah, the reason why I think this game is the gold standard, again, it's just a callback to the roots. It incorporates all the Vania-isms that I think made the Metroidvania Castlevanias great to begin with. It uses the RPG mechanics, but it doesn't have them in a way that makes you feel like you scale super hard. Now, I will say the normal difficulty is a bit of a letdown, but thankfully, those of you that are watching the stream will be among the few to know that the normal difficulty was added in the December 2023 update, because this game originally came out in April 2023, and it released on one difficulty, which is the difficulty now known as Advanced. The normal difficulty was added. It's basically easy mode, right? The Advanced difficulty is definitely, you can tell that it's what the game was originally, because there's a lot more thought put into, like, the fact that the damage values are the way they are. Like, it's balanced around those original damage values that were in the game previously. So if you do play it, I know it sounds like, oh, it's gonna be harder, but trust me, like playing on the game on advanced is like the pure experience of playing the game. Now, of course, you can play it on normal and you'll be fine, and you can always switch between the difficulties whenever you want to. But personally, I would just recommend playing on advanced because the game was basically. Are we back? I've been having internet issues today. Are we back? I hope we're back. Let me know. Nope, we're yeah, stream disconnected briefly. Are we back? Okay, we're back. Okay. Whew. All right, excellent. Thanks, guys. Yeah, you wonder if they have it for Switch or PS4? It's on both. It's on all the major platforms, including PC. So yeah, again, to make it clear, guys, this is the game I speedrun, so there's obvious bias, you know? There's obvious bias, but I do think this game's the gold standard. This game was, like, this game blew my mind when I first played it. And it wasn't necessarily the first Metroidvania I played, either. Like, the first Metroidvania I played, I'll admit, it was Harmony of Dissonance. But, this game blew my mind. Like, every time you reach a new area, it's like, wow. Like, I thought I was getting somewhere in the previous area I was already in, and now I'm in another area. Like, there's so much to explore in Afterimage. It's great. Highly recommend. The exploration is really what carries the game. If any of you like Hollow Knight, I think people that like Hollow Knight especially will like the game. I do not like Hollow Knight so far, but don't consider me the metric for that. Yeah, nice. Buy an XL for sure. And yeah, if any of you try to get into the speedrun for it, that's where I show the speedrun stuff. So, you know, of course, if you're interested in the speedrun, I already have a guide out for any percent on this channel, so check that out. It's a very easy speedrun to get into. Play River City, Random, and Demon's Crest when you're bored and want to play anything new. Probably too easy by today's standard, but they were great for their time. Yeah, sounds good. I've noted those for sure. Speedrun, oh yeah. Alright guys, so that's gonna complete the Metroidvania tier list for now. For now, keyword being for now. We're gonna go back to this when we play some more games down the line, which there will be more. And we'll add to this as I complete them. We'll also revisit Hollow Knight and Samus Returns when I finish those. But I'm pretty satisfied with this. Things will move. I assure you, things will definitely move between each tier. We might even have, I don't know, Harmony Dissonance move up or down, or Metroid Fusion move up or down. We for sure will have Dread move somewhere, probably up, but we'll see. But understand that these came with heartfelt opinions, so it's not just images on a chart, right? There's a human behind this. Anyway, yeah, here we are. Cool list. Definitely interested to see where it goes from here. Particularly interested to see where Super Metroid goes. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm excited to play it. I gotta see where things started. Like it was half of what made the genre what it is today. So I'm excited to play it. Yeah, no problem, Michael. Thanks for hanging out. I'm glad you stumbled upon the channel as well. Appreciate it.